It was supposed to be a joyous day, a celebration of love and family, but the cold realization hit me as I sat in the back of the wedding venue, a place I was told I didn't belong. The laughter of the guests filled the air, the clinking of glasses, and the soft murmur of polite conversation. Yet, in the midst of it all, I felt an icy distance growing between me and my own flesh and blood. I had paid for half of this wedding. Amber, my youngest, my daughter, had insisted on this extravagant celebration. I thought it would be a chance to celebrate her happiness, a time to feel included in the special day of my child. But instead, I was sidelined, an afterthought in the grand scheme of her perfect day. My hand trembled as I reached for my glass of water. It wasn't just nerves. The tremor had been worsening lately. Parkinson's, I'd been told. A diagnosis that was now as much a part of me as the memories I had of raising my children alone. I hated the way it made me feel, weak, fragile, diminished. And Amber, she was the one who had always been my little girl. She was supposed to be the one who understood, the one who appreciated everything I had done for her and for the family. But now, in front of all these strangers, she made it clear that the photos were only for the younger people. The message was clear: I wasn't welcome. I wasn't part of her vision of this perfect youthful celebration. The tremor in my hand worsened. I pressed it against the cool surface of the table, hoping no one would notice. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. It wasn't just about a few awkward moments or misplaced words. No, this was about something much larger, something that had been building for years. My children, who I had given everything for, were plotting behind my back. They were all playing their own games, and I was the pawn. Thomas, my eldest, had always been the one who seemed to have it all figured out. But I knew better. I had watched him spiral into his own world of gambling debts and questionable decisions. And Rebecca, my only daughter, who was supposed to be strong, independent, was now entangled in a mess of her own, pressured and blackmailed by forces I had yet to fully uncover. Amber had always been the most unpredictable. She had always been my little free spirit. But this calculated exclusion was something I hadn't seen coming. How could she be this cruel? How could she ignore everything I had done for her, for the family? The truth hit me like a wave crashing over me. She had her own agenda, and so did the others. They didn't care about me anymore. They were only interested in their own lives, their own success. They had all forgotten who had made it possible for them to have what they had. But little did they know I was planning something far bigger than any of them could ever imagine. It wasn't just about standing by and letting them walk all over me. It wasn't about being the tired, frail mother who had given up her life to raise them. I wasn't going to fade quietly into the background. No, I had spent years building this family, this legacy, and I wasn't about to let it slip away without a fight. This was just the beginning. There was a battle unfolding, and I was about to take control back. But first, I had to get through this day, through the smiles and the fake pleasantries, through the uncomfortable glances and whispered words behind my back. I would play the part for now, but I wasn't blind. I saw everything. I saw the truth, and I was gathering my strength. Before I go on, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. Leave a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Your thoughts mean so much to me. My children, Thomas, Rebecca, and Amber, were no longer the innocent little ones I had once protected. I had spent years shielding them from the harsh realities of life, putting their needs before my own, working tirelessly to give them everything they could ever want. But now, it seemed like all of that had been for nothing. The people they had become were unrecognizable, and the love I had given them had been replaced by greed, manipulation, and a thirst for power. Thomas, now an executive at the company I had built, had always been the ambitious one. But that ambition had come at a cost. What I had thought were signs of success were actually the early signs of a dangerous addiction. Thomas had developed a gambling problem that he had kept hidden for years. The debts piled up, the lies grew more intricate, and the pressure to maintain the facade of success only increased. I had known something was off, but I had never wanted to believe it. Thomas was my firstborn, the one I had entrusted with the future of the business. The thought that he was gambling away our family's legacy was something I could hardly bear to confront. Rebecca, my second child, had always been my rock. She was strong-willed, independent, and determined. But even the strongest of us have weaknesses. Rebecca found herself caught in a compromising situation with one of our major clients. What had started as a simple professional relationship had spiraled into an affair that now threatened to tear apart her career, her marriage, and her reputation. I had seen the look in her eyes when she told me about it: fear, shame, and a deep sense of guilt. But it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and there was nothing I could do to shield her from the fallout. And then there was Amber, my youngest, the one who had always been my little girl. I had held her close through every moment of her life, from her first steps to her first heartbreak. But now, she was a stranger. Amber had always been unpredictable, her free-spirited nature making her difficult to control, but I had never imagined she would go this far. Behind my back, she had been tampering with my Parkinson's medication, replacing my prescriptions with something that would make my symptoms worse, all in an attempt to make me appear mentally incompetent. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever anticipated. How could she do this to me? How could the child I had raised in my own image betray me in such a calculated, cruel way? As the wedding preparations continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Amber had insisted on a grand wedding, and I had reluctantly agreed to cover half of the expenses, wanting to be a part of her special day despite everything that had happened. But the more I watched, the more I felt like an outsider. Amber's fiancé, Seth, seemed too perfect. He was charming, well-spoken, and had that air of someone who knew how to get what he wanted, but there was something about him that didn't sit right with me. He was always asking questions about the family business, about my assets, about the future of Right Interiors. I started digging into Seth's background. I knew he wasn't just another handsome face trying to win Amber's heart. He had his own agenda, and it wasn't just about love. Through a few discreet contacts, I learned the truth about him. Seth Miller wasn't the man he pretended to be. His real name was Samuel Miller, and he had a history of targeting wealthy families, getting close to vulnerable members, and then draining their assets. It was a pattern. He had done this before, and Amber was his next target. I felt sick to my stomach as the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't just a wedding. This was an orchestrated scheme to take everything I had worked for. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. Amber was in on it. She had been blinded by her desire for wealth, her need to escape the life I had worked so hard to give her. Seth was a con artist, and Amber had willingly become part of his plan. She had manipulated me with her charm, pretending to be the loving daughter, all the while setting me up to lose everything. Meanwhile, my own son Thomas was in deeper than I realized. I had never suspected that he would be involved in such a web of deceit, but the truth was undeniable. I had no idea how long he had been siphoning money from the company, but the signs were everywhere: large transfers to untraceable accounts, unexplained expenses, and subtle changes in the company's financial records. All of it pointed to Thomas. How long had he been robbing me blind, all the while pretending to be the dutiful son who would one day take over Right Interiors? Rebecca, too, was being dragged into this mess. She had tried to keep her affair a secret, but now it was impossible to hide. The client involved was threatening to expose everything, and her career hung in the balance. I could see the fear in her eyes every time she came home. She was trying to hold it all together, but the weight of her own mistakes, coupled with the pressure from the family, was beginning to break her down. And in the midst of all this, I had to watch as my children destroyed themselves and each other. I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. The family I had worked so hard to build was crumbling from within. My children were tearing it apart, and I had no idea how to stop it. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going down without a fight. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. Right Interiors, my legacy, my family's future, it was all at risk. But I wasn't just fighting for the company. I was fighting for my dignity, for my health, for my right to be treated with respect, not as an old woman slowly fading away. But what I didn't know then, what none of them knew, was that I was about to take control back. And when I did, nothing would ever be the same again. The wedding day arrived, and with it, a sense of finality. Amber, radiant in her wedding gown, seemed blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break. As I watched her, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of heartbreak. She was supposed to be my little girl, the one I had poured my life into, but now she was a stranger, lost in her own web of lies. Seth, her charming fiancé, was no better. I had uncovered his true intentions, his history of preying on wealthy families and draining them dry. This wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was the culmination of a plot to take everything I had worked for. But I wasn't about to let them win. I had spent weeks gathering evidence, carefully preparing for this moment. I knew that if I was going to protect my legacy, my health, and my dignity, I had to act decisively. As soon as Amber and Seth left for their honeymoon, I made sure their reservations were canceled. Every detail of the trip they thought they would enjoy was now gone, a small but significant blow. It was my first act of defiance, but that was just the beginning. I had much more at my disposal. Later that evening, after the wedding, I called for a family meeting. The champagne flowed, the guests were relaxed, but my children had no idea what was coming. They thought they were safe in their lies, but they had underestimated me. One by one, I pulled out the documents, proof of Amber's manipulation of my medication, Seth's fraudulent schemes, Thomas's embezzlement and gambling debts. Everything was laid bare. The truth was undeniable. I could see the shock on their faces as the evidence hit them. For once, they were speechless. They had spent years plotting, deceiving, and manipulating, thinking I was too weak to fight back. But in that moment, I knew I had won. The power had shifted. I stood there, calm and composed, watching them struggle to find words. It was my turn to speak, my turn to have the upper hand. No longer was I the frail, helpless mother they thought they could control. I had outsmarted them, and they couldn't deny the truth that now hung in the air. It was time for the tables to turn. In the aftermath, everything changed. The family I had spent decades building was broken, shattered by lies and betrayal. But amidst the wreckage, something more valuable was being rebuilt: truth, justice, and redemption. The path to restoring my life wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I made sure the legal actions were carried out, ensuring that Seth was forced to leave and Amber had to face the consequences of her actions. There was no place for people like them in my life anymore. Thomas, although deeply ashamed, began the painful journey of recovery. His gambling addiction had nearly destroyed him, but I could see the flicker of hope in his eyes as he took the first steps toward making amends. It wasn't easy, and I knew the road would be long, but I also knew he had to walk it alone. I could only offer him the chance to change, but it was up to him to take it. Rebecca, caught in the web of manipulation, was given the opportunity to rebuild her career and integrity. She was still my daughter, and despite the mistakes she had made, I couldn't abandon her. She had her own battles to fight, but she would have to face them on her own terms, with the strength she had once shown when I had first raised her. As for me, I had no need for power or wealth. I had already built an empire, but what mattered most now was peace, my peace. I had spent so many years fighting to protect them, to provide for them, and now the greatest victory was in reclaiming control of my own life. It wasn't about money or status. It was about finding my strength again, reclaiming my dignity, and choosing the future I wanted. My children learned the hard way that loyalty isn't something that can be bought or manipulated. It's something that's earned through love, respect, and honesty. And those who choose deceit over loyalty ultimately pay the price. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from facing the truth and reclaiming your own power. I hope my story inspires you to fight for what matters most to you, to trust yourself, and to never stop seeking the truth no matter how difficult it may be. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope my story resonates with you. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice truly matters. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Real Her Stories for more stories like mine. Together we can learn, grow, and support one another.